I'm Evelyn Linwood. Welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome. For those of you who don't know, I am a self-published author with just one book out, and I'm working on the sequel. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about publishing timelines. So how long does it take to publish a book? What outside factors affect that time? And what's like normal versus the outliers. Okay, so I would say there's kind of three main factors that affect how long it takes. And one of those is just like the experience level of the author. For instance, a lot of people will have, before they publish any books, a lot of writers will have kind of a hard drive full of like versions and snippets of this project that they have in their head that they're trying to get on the page but really struggling. The path to writing, like the gap between someone who has never completed a draft versus someone who has completed a draft, is much bigger than the gap between someone with a completed first draft and a published novel. That may surprise you. Like the percentages of writers versus finished drafters is actually, I don't have the exact percent, but I remember it was like a huge difference. So writer experience level, author experience level. A lot of people write slower at the start of their career than at the end because they figure out like what works for them. They just get more experienced at building a world or building characters, or like how much outlining they need, what kind of notes they need to take so that they don't lose their place, what time of day is the best day to be creative for them. It's just a matter of like getting used to how you work as an author. So that is a big factor, especially at the start of a career. But there are, I think, two bigger factors. I would say the main things, especially like long term, is which career path you have or which publication path. So like, are you self-publishing or are you going through a traditional publishing house? And what genre are you writing? So let's talk about the publication path first. As a general rule, traditional publication is significantly slower, although I do think it's been speeding up over time. So between like the time that a traditionally published author has to spend all this time querying their novel in order to get an agent, and that's not even to say that that book will get published. You just have representation. So then your agent shops the book around to different publishers, and eventually, hopefully, an editor at one of the publication houses will say, yes, I want to work with this book. So you sign with the publication house, and then you have to work with the editor, the cover design, all that stuff. Well, I don't think trad authors really get to do their cover design, but it takes, from the time you're actually signed with a publication house or a traditional publisher, whatever they're called, it's probably 1 or 2 years, and sometimes they'll just like randomly push it back because it's not really random, it's market based. So they'll have like cohorts that they want to publish at this time, and then if you're not in that cohort, you have to wait like 3 more months or something. I don't fully understand it, but it's basically they can only afford to publish so many at a time. They don't want to have 2 that are too similar, that kind of thing. So the author doesn't really pick the timeline, and it can be a couple of years. Sometimes it's faster, might be 6 months. You might get lucky, but as a general rule, probably 1 to 2 years is my understanding of it. And I've heard that from quite a few trad authors, but Like, you may also notice that there's a larger gap between books. So, like a traditionally published author, they have to shop around with a new book again. And maybe that same publication house, that same editor wants them, and that's great. Sometimes they just work with the same ones, and then you don't see that huge gap. But sometimes they have to shop around again, and then, like, hopefully the same agent will represent them. Typically, if you have an agent for one book, they want to represent you for more. But they have to shop around again. So there's that time gap, and then there's, like, actually writing the book. So you have to write the book, shop around, and then it starts over again. So it might be 1 to 2 years from the time it's actually signed, but there might be a time period where it's not. And you just, I mean, you might write things in the other books in the background. So, yeah, so that's why traditional publication is so slow. There's like those extra steps. And then it goes through like multiple rounds of edits. So there will be developmental, copy. There might be more than one. And that's less common with indie. So if you self-publish, you basically set your own timeline. How fast do you write? How fast can you edit? Yes, maybe you'll work with a professional editor. Highly encourage that behavior. But, like, they often don't take more than, like, a month to work with your book. So, and sometimes way less, depending. Some of them work crazy fast. It's insane. So, say you're self-publishing. There isn't the gap while you're trying to get an agent, and there isn't the gap while you're trying to get a publishing house. And then you can also kind of control what's going on in the background, so you can be working ahead, like getting your cover designer, all that stuff, while you're even just working on the book. So there's just, it's like everything's compressed because it's all in your hands instead of someone else's. And it's also compressed by market expectations. So, like, readers of indie self-published work, they want books to come out quickly. A lot of them are really voracious readers. And it was very common for a while to do, like, a rapid release strategy. So a book would come out, like, a few weeks apart from the sequel, and that would keep happening with a series. So inadvertently, kind of, readers were trained to expect that. And so, yeah, indie publishing works a lot faster. It's not uncommon for an author to write 4 books a year and publish all of them. I have seen some who do 10. Now, I'm talking before AI was a thing. So this was actually people genuinely writing 10 books a year. It's a thing that has happened. I don't know how, but it has. Yeah. So, the other thing that really impacts it is genre. So, for instance, something like romance, very fast. Romance readers expect shorter gaps between books. And honestly, like, romance, I'm not saying anything negative about romance novels. I have to preface this with that. But they are significantly more formulaic because you expect, like, certain beats to definitely happen. So, like, the shape of a romance story, even if the characters are unique and their situation is unique, the story beats themselves, like, are very similar. It's very common to have, like, an Act 3 breakup or that type of thing. And you know where it's moving. Like, the way characters are introduced is often similar. It's just, it's a lot more formulaic, and I'm not saying that as an insult. But the fact that there is a formula to map your work onto means that writing romance can be faster. Whereas if it's a genre like science fiction or like epic fantasy, where there's more world building and more like research or that kind of thing involved, a lot of times readers don't expect the book that fast. So romance readers might expect a book every month, or every 6 months or something, whereas fantasy readers will be okay if there's a year or two between your books. Yeah. But honestly, like, even for the longer genres, unless it's truly like epic fantasy and it's huge, then you might be able to get away with like 3 years in self-publishing. Readers kind of want the sequel in a year or so. Maybe 2 years, but yeah. So, where do I fall on that spectrum? If you don't know, my debut came out in May of last year. So it's currently June, and the sequel is not done. I do, like, I'm a slower writer, meaning I know people who can, like, blast out 2,000 words in an hour, and on a good day I can do 800. And my prose isn't any better. Like, it's just I move slower when I'm writing. And then on a bad day, it's significantly less. But I don't think that's really a problem. It's just a fact of how I write. And part of that is that I'm, like, double checking with other bits of I go back and read a little passage and then come back and write something. So I think it might be partially, like, down to my working memory, because I'll forget bits of details of my story and I want it to match. So I don't want to leave, like, inconsistencies. Like, I don't want a character's eye color to change. I don't want to reference an earlier scene that I had cut. That kind of thing. So there is that. And then I'm writing fantasy, so there's world building and research and stuff. Now, my books aren't that long. At least these ones aren't. So my next series is going to be longer books. The first one is currently sitting at 115,000 words, which is about 350 pages. And I'm adding significantly to it in the current edit. So it's probably going to come out significantly longer than that. Yeah, but so those books will probably have bigger gaps, reasonably. My current book is definitely coming out by the end of the year. So it'll be 18 months-ish at the most. Not great, but so that's me being a slow writer. Like, a whole book in a year and a half is slow in self-publishing, which is bonkers. I'm sorry. People take 10 years to write a book. George R.R. Martin had a 12-year gap between a couple of his books, which, yes, they're huge. They're giant beasts of hugeness. But, so, if you're an aspiring author, just be aware that there is definitely timeline pressure for either version. Like, a lot of traditionally published authors will have to write on a deadline if, say, their book was purchased ahead of time and, like, they had a 2-book deal or something. So they had book 1 done and then the sequel has been purchased. So they have to write it in a reasonable time. Yeah, so there is writing on a deadline, which there's, like, money stress attached to that because you may have already been paid. And then, yeah, but, and you might have to edit on a fine timeline as well. So it's just a matter of, do you want to be in charge of your timeline, or is someone else in charge, but you also may have to rush for a couple months at a time randomly. Yeah. I just wanted to let you guys know kind of the difference in expectations and the difference in what you can do But, like, there's major exceptions. So, for instance, Nora Roberts releases like 2 or 3 books a year as a traditionally published author. It happens. It's not common, but yeah. So I will just add one thing. So the rapid release strategy that a lot of self-published authors have in the past employed has decreased in positive impact. So the algorithm might still like it, but there's more people doing it, so it doesn't really have the same boost that it used to. So don't feel like you have to do that. We're not in a rush in indie publishing. You can kind of publish at your own timeline and then build readers off your backlist, if that's the route you want to go. There is also a new danger if you do rapid release, because in the past, they'd be like, oh wow, this author either saved books or writes really crazy fast. Now they're like, I think this author uses AI, which in many, many cases is not the case, but still, readers will make assumptions. So if you're considering rapid release, just bear that in mind. You will probably get somebody saying that, even if it's like obviously not the case. Anyway, that's all I had. I know I bounced a little, but I don't like to write actual scripts down for my videos because then I feel like I'm giving a speech instead of talking to people. And yeah, so I'll see you next time. Next video is a vlog, which might be my last vlog for a while, because I think I'm going to be adding writing challenges instead, or at least in addition to, so I might have a vlog once in a while, but they're just getting repetitive because it's just me updating where I am in my writing project, and I just feel like I'm in the middle of a grind, so meh. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far through my crazy, weird ramble, share your favorite emoji in the comments.